My next guest is a member of the Armed Services Committee, an Iraq War veteran and a Purple Heart recipient. Last week, I had the opportunity to speak with Senator Tammy Duckworth from Illinois. So let me just ask you, you're on the committees, you've served veterans, you've served in the military. I'd like to know, as we think about the hard choices, that we can't have it all, but what are some of the hard, the disciplines of hard choices that we need to make on our national security as you see it?
Well, I think that we can't skimp on readiness. I know that, my colleagues on both sides of the aisle would agree with me that we need to support the men and women of our armed forces, and we need to make sure that they have the equipment and the training that they need to keep us and our nation safe. But there's bloat in the defense budget. There are things that we can go after. I mean, not the least of which would be, for example, service contracts. We can take a look at that, and so I would hope that we continue some of the work that DoD has been doing with relooking at some of the waste that's happening within the DoD budget. But I think that we should never sacrifice when it comes to readiness, whether it is in terms of equipment or personnel.
I'm interested in. We're going to be discussing China a lot today, and you sort of begin to think about, well, what are the strategic guideposts in carving out what sorts of national security posture and capacity we should have. But defense has become such a big issue. Everything from small group non-state terrorism to various forms of state actor and not state actor, cyber threats. And so it's not just all a function of militaries. And I'm just wondering what you think the literacy of your colleagues is on the very multidimensional nature of threats today.
Well, I think that, that's one of those ongoing conversations I have with my colleagues. I mean, the PRC is a great example, right? We need to stand up to them. They obviously are an adversary in terms of national security issues, but also we have to still conduct trade with them, and we still have to work with them. They are one of the largest customers for corn and soybean and pork products out of Illinois. On the other hand, I know that, they are pushing hard in the Indo-Pacific region. And when I talk to our allies and friends in the Indo-Pacific region, what they say is, please, we need the United States to be here and be a presence to oppose the PRC and to give us something to hang our hat on when the PRC comes and tries to push us to do things their way. And so I think it's a balancing act. And those are the conversations I have with my colleagues all the time, is that we, the United States, have to be a presence, especially in a place like the Indo-Pacific, both militarily, but economically as well. So we need to look at, for example, re-engaging in trade agreements, whether it's bilateral or multilateral trade agreements, at the same time as making sure that we resource the Indo-PACOM so that they can have a real presence in the region as well.
Senator, I think it was shocking to many people that the January 6th insurrection comprised so many former veterans, folks from police units, and a focus has come. Secretary Austin has begun to create a kind of introspective look at people that have been both radicalized in the military and that are targeted by some of these radical groups. How big a problem do you think this is? And do you think there's a pathway for dealing with really the dangers within our military facing our government today?
So these were conversations I had with then General Austin, retired General Austin, now Secretary Austin, prior to his confirmation. I think that the trend has been growing, but it's not new, right? We had this happen, and Secretary Austin talked about this with the 82nd Airborne in the early 90s, where you had some skinhead groups and some white supremacist groups target the 82nd Airborne in particular. We've also had drug cartels target members of the military as well. So targeting the military men and women is not a new thing. But I will tell you that I have seen over the last probably 2 decades this growing radicalization of a portion within the military. And I think part of it, too, comes with social media consumption. One of the conversations I had is we don't know what our young troops are consuming because we don't know what they're consuming on their personal devices and the like. And so we need to make sure that we understand what kind of information they're getting and that they are trained to recognize false information, not the least of which we have not been funding programs within the DoD, things like the Pentagon channel. When I first enlisted, And I would go and get, I'm waiting for my annual physical. I'm getting my ID card made, sitting in the waiting room of any military activity. There'd be a TV channel on. It was always a Pentagon channel reading the news to me. Over the course of my career, I saw that change to CNN, and then it became Fox. Everywhere I went, it was Fox News. And not just Fox News, but Fox Entertainment. And I remember spending the last 10 years of my military career in talks, in op centers, and the biggest screen of the multiple screens that were on, you would see Fox News. And I would say, well, you know what? That's not actually news. That's Fox Entertainment. If you want news, put on CNN. We should still be visually watching everybody else, from Fox to MSNBC to everybody else, and we get a good 360 picture of the situation. But the main source of news cannot be an entertainment division. And so that was one of the conversations I had with the secretary. It was like, we have to root this out. We've got to figure out which troops are coming into the military with these opinions to begin with these tendencies. And then we need to figure out what media they're consuming while they're in, and then who's targeting them. And I'm really pleased that he has done a DoD-wide stand down to look at extremism in the military. And I hope, I'm eager to find out, what the results of his actions are going to be.
Senator, we were all shocked as well, and I have to be honest about Tucker Carlson's comments. I can't believe sometimes that we have to, discuss these ongoing issues of gender justice, gender fairness and equity, but it is an issue in society. I was looking at your tweets, and you commended President Biden for appointing 2 female generals to 4-star commands. I grew up as a military brat. I grew up in DoD schools. I saw outstanding women leaders in the military decades ago, but they were few and far between. I guess my question is, from your experience, and these women that were just appointed 4-star commands, is there now going to be, a chance that when we look at the military, we're going to see, not, 100 men and 4 women, but we're going to see greater gender fairness, equity across all jobs in the military?
I think so. And the combat exclusion rule was part of why we did not have women at the highest levels. We know that you need that combat to be a combatant commander in order to really achieve the highest ranks in the military, both officer and enlisted wise. I see that the falling of those barriers is allowing us to move forward, but we're still not there yet. I mean, I actually, in this latest NDAA, successfully included funding for a report on the lack of diversity in our special operator community. For example, it's not just women, but it's also people of color. Why is it we have so, underrepresentation of people of color in the special operator community, especially at the highest rank? And as long as that is happening, we're not tapping into the full strength of this nation. We have to be all over the globe, a leader of the free world. And it helps us, and it is better for us when we show up with diversity in the troops. And when we show up in Africa and there is an African-American, leader amongst our troops. When we're in Asia, we're going to go into the Philippines and go after Abu Sayyaf in the Philippines. It's good that we have Filipino-speaking American servicemen and women who can actually engage there. And so this is really, really important. And we need to make sure that we have diversity at the very top of our military. Gender diversity is important, but also racial diversity as well.
Let me ask you finally, Senator, this is a great conversation. I like talking big ideas with folks here. But the big question I have is, we've gone through a number of years where we have been sort of rough on our allies. Our former administration was somewhat cozy with certain questionable leaders like Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. It raises questions on whether the solvency of the American alliance with allies is something that they can trust America to be with them in their dark days. And my question is, from a strategic perspective, from an alliance perspective, which is different than talking about what tools and devices and ships and planes we have. But I'd just like to know whether talking to leaders from around the world and also our combatant commanders, whether those relationships are solid now, or whether there is such a period of doubt that now has to be overcome. And sometimes doubt and trust are forged after conflicts. So I'm just wondering if America can bounce back from your point of view as a reliable ally without having a collision somewhere.
Yeah, I think think we can, and I think that the rest of the world is eager. They're eager for us to regain and reclaim our leadership role. And I think the election of President Biden was a big step in that direction. But we have to follow through with that. I'll give you an example. In the Indo-Pacific region, I was at the Shangri-La Dialogues 2 years ago, and one of the things that they said to us is just be here. Just be here and stand up for the rule of law, for international norms, and be a presence in the region. And I heard that over and over and over again from the Vietnamese, from the Indonesians, from everybody that we chatted with. And I think that you're going to see that greater engagement. You saw that right now with the NDS. That's, I think, one of the things that the Trump administration actually did really well was identifying the Indo-Pacific region as a place where we need to be more of a presence. Admiral Davidson did an excellent job with that. I was just chatting with him, and now with his nominee to be his replacement, Admiral Aquilino, I was just chatting with him today and saying we have to be in the region. And it's not just in terms of military presence, but we have to engage in trade. We have to engage in partnerships as well. I think we're well on our way back to regaining the trust, but we have to be consistent, and we have to continue to show up. We've disappeared for 4 years, and they want to see us there. And these are early days yet. We're just a couple months into the Biden administration. And I think you're going to see over the next 4 years, America really reclaim and retake our leadership role. I know that here in the Senate, there's a bipartisan support for that push. I'm actually working with Senator Sullivan of Alaska. He and I are leading the next CODEL to the Shangri-La Dialogue, for example. And we want to make sure that the rest of the world understand that it's not just the executive branch, but the legislative branch is also behind the re-engagement with the rest of the world as well.
Well, Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois, member of the Armed Services Committee, I really appreciate this conversation. You've got an open door. Whenever you want to kind of talk, big issues of national security, defense, or anything else, come back and join us at the Hill. Thank you so much.
I will. We need to talk logistics.